Hi whiskey enthusiasts, it's Brad and I'm back with a review for you today on what is largely considered one of the better scotches to get started with, whether you're just breaking into whiskey in general or also if you have been a long time bourbon drinker and are looking to get into scotch. This is considered a quality scotch, but yet something that is accessible for those who aren't quite accustomed to malt whiskey yet. This is Balvenie 12-year Doublewood. It's widely available. You can usually find it in the price range of $50 to $55 and can on occasion in certain areas even find it cheaper than that. Balvenie is a well-respected Speyside brand, and I don't really think you could say that they actually make anything that's bad. There are some that I like better than others, and they make a lot of different expressions, especially for someone that is from Speyside. The number of different bottlings made by Balvenie is endless, and they bring out peated versions and different kinds of wood versions, and so this is their entry scotch, and we're going to go over it today and explain why it is so highly recommended to those that are getting into scotch, and tell you a little bit about what the flavors are that you can expect from it. Okay? The nose begins with sort of a caramel apple, some honey, some sweet bread, and besides the apple and a little bit of pear, you also get some other types of fruit, like a pale stone fruit, maybe an apricot or a peach. There's not a lot of true maltiness to this. It's only evident in kind of a sweet bready scent. Just a tiny bit maybe of some nutmeg. There's not a lot of spice in the nose. Just enough to kind of warm up that sweetness. There's nothing off-putting, there's nothing overly strong, but yet it's a nose that you can get the scents out of without huge amounts of effort. It's neither weak nor strong. It's just right there in a comfortable spot in the middle. In the opening of the palate, you get definitely more spice than you do in the nose, to an extent so that it almost comes across as almost like a pear pie or a pear cobbler, because you get a little bit of that breadiness, you get the spices, including the nutmeg and the cinnamon, and you get the fruit, which in the palate is more pear than it is apple. There's even still a little bit of that peach in there. But when you do make a cobbler or a pie of those kinds of fruits, you're going to be adding cinnamon and nutmeg and sugar to them. So that's why it kind of comes across that way. On the palate, you get just a little bit more of a malt in the latter part of the palate, but the fruitiness never really goes away, and it stays sweet, and it stays pear, apple, peach type notes all the way through the palate. I never do get a true vanilla in it like you would in most bourbons, but there is sort of a burnt sugar creme brulee thing that comes out in the latter part of the palate. There's no one flavor that really overpowers this. It's all well balanced, and it stays in its little. It stays at this little level, medium profile where none of the flavors are in your face so much that they might off-put some people. It's very hard to say anything really bad about this whiskey, and yet it's not bland. It's not uninteresting like so many lower tier scotches are. So the trick of being palatable for a large population, and yet at the same time maintaining some interesting qualities and not being bland and forgettable is kind of difficult to produce. But that's why this is so universally liked by so many different people. Let's look at the finish before we stop. The finish, unlike many whiskeys, stays a little bit fruity. A lot of times you see the fruit die out by the time you get to the finish, but in this it really doesn't. It stays there. It's kind of got a medium finish. You still have the spices in there, and the breadiness, and the burnt sugar, and all of that kind of melds together, but you never truly lose the fruit in it either, and that apple/pear note carries all the way through. One of the strengths of this whiskey is that from the nose to the palate and the finish, there's a consistency. Now, as someone that drinks scotch constantly and likes to try as many different expressions and as many different finishes from as many different regions of Scotland as possible, I tend to like the things that morph as they go through the cycle into the finish, and you taste different things in each section. However, that's not necessarily comfortable for those that are just getting into Scotch, either as a beginning drinker or as a converted bourbon drinker. So that's some of the reasons why this works so well as an entry Scotch for those new to Scotch. And so I hope that gives you some insight into why this works and what you can expect from it. It's very, very, very difficult to find a reason not to like this Scotch. It just doesn't have anything that's going to slap you and turn you off. So with confidence, you can try this one. And on the plus side too, you don't need to go out and necessarily spend $55 to try this, because it won't take you very long in most areas to find at least one bar that has some of this. It's very common out there on the shelves in reasonably stocked bars. So you should be in a short period of time be able to find a way to get a drink of it without buying an entire bottle. Hopefully this will give you some flavor profiles to look for when you do that, and I recommend that everyone try it at least once. As far as scoring it, I would probably give this about an 82, 83 out of 100, which is a solid, high quality Scotch that everyone can drink. It's not going to blast you with a particular flavor profile that's going to just make you fall in love with it. But it does everything very well, and it's hard to find any faults in it. So I hope that's useful for you. Go out and find some. Hopefully you'll love it too.